Okay, Hare Krishna. So we're going to give an introduction to Bhagavad-gita. And this is an introduction for those who have no experience or knowledge of Bhagavad-gita or Vedic history or anything like that. So before we get into the book, I want to explain a little bit about the history. The history comes to us from a book called Mahabharata. You've heard of Mahabharata? So Mahabharata is the greater history of ancient India. And Mahabharata records the history from approximately 5,000 years ago. And it is the history of the invasion of the earth by the asuras or the demonic entities. You've heard about that history? And the asuras, they invaded the earth, they overwhelmed the earth, they became very insolent, proud, they created havoc, so many problems. And so the earth personified, she went to appeal to the creator of the universe, Lord Brahma, for help. And Lord Brahma, he went to the shore of the Milk Ocean to then ask Vishnu, what do we do? We've got a problem here on earth. And Vishnu said, I will come personally and take care of the problem. So that explains the advent of Lord Krishna. So Krishna is the Supreme Personality of Godhead. That's how we call him. That term is a little strange for many people. Most people, they usually think, okay, God, does that mean God? Supreme Personality of Godhead. The Vedic scriptures explain the science of God and explain that there's many different manifestations of God. As Vishnu, or as what are called the Yuga avatars or the Leela avatars, Krishna appears in many different forms at different times for different purposes. And of all those personalities, Krishna, he is the original and he is the Supreme Personality. So that's why we say Supreme Personality of Godhead. So Krishna came personally as the original Supreme Lord. He appeared on the planet at that time for several purposes, one of which was to remove all of these demonic elements that were here. And the other one, actually, the actual reason is to associate with his friends and to display his pastimes, his activities, so that by hearing about him, we can become purified and develop a desire to want to go be with him in the spiritual world. People who, let's say, religion is given to people with the idea that we can obtain salvation. Although in the Judeo-Christian religions, that is not explained very well. What does that mean, salvation or liberation? Liberation is more of a New Age term. People may have heard of that. But people don't know what does that mean. So we can take a geographic representation. We have the material world, material sphere. Beyond that, geographically, we can say, is the spiritual realm, which is far beyond our ability to know by ourselves. Thank you. So, if we want to go someplace, we have to know where we want to go. Okay, human life gives us the opportunity to determine what is our future going to be. We determine our future by the activities that we do in the present. Just like today is a continuation of the activities that we began yesterday or days before. Can we close that, please? So in the same way, next lifetime is a carryover, let's say a continuation of the activities that we do in this lifetime. So what is that next lifetime going to be? We can determine that by what we are doing now. How we invest our time, the people we associate with. Do we try to raise ourselves up, or are we degrading ourselves by our behavior? So liberation means actually the opportunity to free ourselves from reincarnation, from being born here again in the future, by going to the spiritual world. Once we go to that spiritual world, we never come back. So Krishna, he comes and he has his activities here, which are recorded in the Vedic scriptures, so that by hearing them, we can develop a desire to want to go there. So just like if you want to go to some tropical place, you go to the travel agent and you say, I would like to go to where? Oh, some tropical place. Oh, that's nice. Where? You have to give some idea. Where? Mauritius, that's a nice tropical place. Or you could go to Hawaii, or Caribbean, or Philippines. Where? So the same thing about the spiritual world. If we want, when we achieve liberation, where would we like to go? So by hearing about Krishna, we can decide, I want to go be with Krishna. That sounds like fun. And the saints that have come before us, they explain to us, this is the highest perfection that one can achieve. So we have this wonderful opportunity by hearing about Krishna to go to that place. So that's the primary purpose for his appearance here. He could take care of all those demons simply by his material energy, but that's Leela. That's recorded his pastime of killing the demons. So this is explained in Bhagavad-gita. We'll get to there eventually. So the Mahabharata then is explaining this history of how Krishna advent, how the demons came, how Krishna made his advent, all the intrigue leading up to this battle. And it's not that just Krishna came and just killed everybody, but there's a whole drama that's associated with that, and it's very intriguing. Maybe you've heard Mahabharata, huh? Have you read? Oh yeah. So you start reading, you cannot put it down. It's so amazing. So, and it's also at the same time is full of moral challenges. What's the right thing to do, right? It creates so many different situations that people are put in. And what's the right thing, what's the wrong thing? And it's very challenging to understand. And all of us, we have these challenges in life, right? What's the right thing, what's the wrong thing? And we don't always get it right. Sometimes we make mistakes and we have to suffer consequences. So the Shastra, the scripture, is full of such questions that help us to understand how to live in this life. Bhagavad-gita then is spoken by Krishna to Arjuna. Let's say all of the events of Mahabharata, they lead up to a great battle of the cousin brothers, the Kurus versus the Pandavas. And many, many thousands, even millions of people were involved in that battle. So at the beginning of the battle, Arjuna he's the protagonist. Protagonist, you know. If you don't understand, you let me know. So he says, Krishna is actually driving his chariot. Arjuna is a great warrior. And Arjuna says, take my chariot into the middle. I want to see who's on the other side. Who do I have to fight with here? So they go to the middle of the battlefield, and he sees on the other side, he sees his grandfather, his cousins, his brothers, his friends. And so he starts to get a little sympathetic. I love those people. I don't want to kill them. So he loses heart. He says, I don't think I want to fight. I'm just, let them have the kingdom, whatever they want, that's okay. I'm going to leave, I'll go to the forest, they can have everything. I don't want to kill them. So that then creates the circumstances for Krishna to speak the spiritual science of Bhagavad-gita. Now it's very interesting that Bhagavad-gita is spoken on a battlefield right before a battle in which millions of people are going to die. Of course, all of us, we have to deal with death, face death at some point, but on a battlefield, death is imminent. It's going to happen very soon. And so naturally then the questions of what is life, what is death, they come up. And so Bhagavad-gita addresses those questions. Bhagavad-gita, there's 5 primary subject matters, which are the living being, God, karma, time, and the material nature, this material world. And how all of these 5 factors, how do they interact? How is the living being born into this world? How is he affected by the material energy? How does he become free from the influence of the material energy? Who is God? What is our relationship? How do we establish that relationship? All of these things are discussed. So Bhagavad-gita then is considered one of the primary spiritual texts of the entire world. It's considered the basics. It gives the basics of the spiritual science for understanding what does spirit mean. So everybody's heard spiritual, right? But this has to be probably the most user-defined word in the world. You know what I mean? User-defined. I think spiritual is this. I think spiritual is that. One time I did a survey to ask people, what do you think is, I put a whole list of many things. So check the box for the things that you think are spiritual. So I made this online survey, and I would go to public and I would pass out the paper and ask them to go there and help me with this survey. And I put things like sunsets, walking on the beach, church, of course, love, sex, what else? Sitting inside in front of the fire on a rainy day. So many different kinds of things like this. Candles have to be spiritual, because every scene you see in a movie where there's something spiritual going on, there's always a lot of candles. So candles have to be spiritual. And Jesus, of course, Jesus is spiritual, right? So I put many things like that. And I was surprised, but not surprised, to see that people had checked almost every box equally. In other words, there was no one particular thing that was spiritual. I put like church or scripture or things like that would maybe some people would think of being more spiritual than candles or walks in the forest. But no, those walks in the forest were equally as spiritual as scripture and church. So what does spiritual mean? Nobody really knows. This is a problem. We don't know what spiritual means, because the Judeo-Christian religion, the Bible particularly, does not give a very good definition. And so we decide what is spiritual, and generally what it is, things that touch our heart, right? Things that make our heart go pitter-patter, we have sympathy, right? Or something that warms our heart. And this is generally what people take to be spiritual. But spiritual is actually not that difficult a concept. God is spiritual, and anything related to God is spiritual. If it's not connected with God, it's not spiritual. Very simple. So, God is spiritual, and we'll give a basic explanation of spiritual. There's Bhagavad-gita, Krishna explains that he has many different energies, but two major energies are spiritual and material. The spiritual energy is personal. Okay, we are persons. We are spiritual energy. This chair, no personality there, no life. It's not spiritual. It's material. So, living beings, all living beings are spiritual. And so we can say a blade of grass, spiritual energy is there because unless the spiritual energy is present, the material energy doesn't change. Wherever there is birth, growth, duration, production of byproducts, dwindling, and finally dying, these are the symptoms of life. And by those symptoms, we can understand that the spiritual energy is present. So in a cow, right, Nandini, in the dog body, right, your cats, they're all spiritual beings. They have a different body, but they're just like you and I, but they've got a different model that they're driving in this lifetime. Next lifetime, they can get a human body. So this is very important to understand, that I am a spiritual being, but the floor, no, not spiritual. This we'll give a deeper, more detailed explanation of that as we go along, but that's sufficient for now. So, spiritual, how does a spiritual being, why we're spiritual beings, why are we in a dead material world? This is one of the existential questions of life. Who am I? Where have I come from? Why am I here? What's the purpose of life? Where do I go when I die? This is all explained in Bhagavad-gita. So the Bhagavad-gita then gives very satisfying answers to this, answers that not only satisfy the intellect, but answers that satisfy the heart as well. And so the Bhagavad-gita relieves us from what's called the darkness of ignorance, spiritual ignorance. So that's a basic introduction to the book. So do you have any questions? Okay. So let's open up then. And we'll go to chapter 1. Now I would encourage you, of course we're reading from Bhagavad-gita by A.C. Bhaktivedanta Swami Prabhupada, Bhagavad-gita as it is. And this particular edition, written in 1972, the original edition, is what we're using for this class. And so, again, I encourage you to read the preface and the introduction at some point, because Prabhupada gives a very good explanation of Bhagavad-gita. In fact, so sometime read that. So this first chapter is titled The Battlefield of Kurukshetra. Setting, what's it called? Setting the scene, right? In the original? Hand me my my Bhagavad-gita, please.
Such a
Chapter 1, Observing the Armies on the Battlefield of Kurukshetra. Now, we should understand that they're making posthumous edits to Srila Prabhupada's works. The first one that jumps right out is the title of the first chapter. The original title is Observing the Armies on the Battlefield of Kurukshetra, and the edited version just says Battlefield of Kurukshetra. So we don't care for the edited book. We like the original. I'm using the electronic one, the changed book electronically, and I have the original paper here. Okay, so this chapter is also, you could say, setting the scene. We get to see what's going on, and in this chapter, it begins with a personality by the name of Sanjaya, who has mystic vision. He's sitting with Dhritarashtra, who is the father of the Kurus, the antagonists of the story. And so Dhritarashtra is blind. So he wants to know what's going on the battle scene. So Sanjaya, who has mystic vision, can see everything that's going on, and he's sitting there with Dhritarashtra and he's explaining everything to him. And the first sloka, these are called sloka, or verse, means sloka. It says, huh? So Dhritarashtra is inquiring from Sanjaya, after assembling in the place of pilgrimage at Kurukshetra, what did my sons and the sons of Pandu do, being desirous to fight? So Dharma Chetre Kurukshetre is the Sanskrit. Dharma Chetre, Chetre means place. Dharma means a place of pilgrimage, a place of Dharma, a place of righteous activity. And the field where they are is called Kurukshetra. So Dhritarashtra is inquiring, what's going on there? And the next sloka, then Sanjaya says, after looking over the army gathered by the sons of Pandu, King Duryodhana went to his teacher and began to speak the following words. Now, there's, for those who are new to Bhagavad-gita, there's a lot of Sanskrit words, and in this chapter particularly, there's Sanskrit names which are challenging for the first timer. It's very difficult to read all these words. I want to suggest to you that for your initial reading, these names are not so important. You can keep track a little bit, you can follow the story a little bit, but it's not important to know the pronunciation. In fact, generally, for my classes for my course on Bhagavad-gita, I suggest to the students that they simply read the translation without reading the commentary, just to get an idea of the story, because it's a 900-page book, and what happens is if you try to read every word, you can't see the forest for the trees. Do you have that expression here?
Yeah.
Huh? So there's too many trees. You can't, So I say, okay, forget all the trees. Let's have a look at the forest. So just read the translations and then get the idea of the story, what's going on. And even the names, you don't have to, you can just say, make abbreviations or substitute for them, give some kind of common name that you know. And then, just so you can keep the story straight. So there's a lot of these in this first chapter. And it's explaining the various personalities who are there to fight, and what their attitudes is based on certain traditions, blowing the conch shell. You know what conch shell, right? From the sea. Yeah. So these shells, you take the end off and you blow in it like a trumpet. And so it was traditional at that time that the men who were fighting, they would have their great conch shell and they would blow it, and it's like a bugle saying, "Oh, here I am," right? You're announcing yourself with that. And so later in this chapter, they get into, they're blowing their conch shells and everybody like that, okay, we're here to fight, and yeah, we're here to fight. And so they're, challenging each other like that, and blowing their conch shells. So, as I explained earlier, briefly, Arjuna, has Krishna take his chariot in the middle, and he's looking at the personalities there and who's there to fight, and his cousins, brothers, grandfather, and he says, this is not good. He says, and he becomes moralistic, right? In the modern day, killing is bad. People are against the death penalty, right? Because killing is bad. Huh? So if there's a criminal, they should not be killed. Just leave them stay in prison for the whole time. This is the idea. So killing is bad because they don't have any understanding of life, spiritual truth, which means that the person is never killed. The spiritual being is eternal. And if the criminal is killed, that will be considered sufficient punishment for his sins. And so, freed from that karma, he'll be able to take a higher birth in the next life. So, but Arjuna is he's coming down to a what we say, mundane moral platform of today. He says, sin will overcome us if we kill all these people. Even though they're avaricious, even though they want to take everything away from me, I don't want to kill them. Right? Killing is bad. We will be guilty of sin. And so he says, I don't want to do that. I'll go to the forest. I'll give up everything. Then he explains something else that's very important. In text number 39, turn there, text 39, we'll look at that.
Christian? 39.
39.
39.
Yeah. 39.
Yeah.
Or 10. 10. 39.
39.
9, 10. 10.
10 je
10.
10? Oh, that's 10. That's right. Okay. 9. Okay. Yeah. Right. Okay. So, with the destruction of this is, he's saying the destruction of the dynasty. All these people, they represent the dynasty. With the destruction of the dynasty, the eternal family tradition is vanquished or stopped. And the rest of the family becomes involved in irreligious practice. So, to understand this, we have to understand a bit of the spiritual culture of that time. And here's how it works. The successive generations, they have the duty to perform sacrifice for the forefathers who have died previous to them. Okay? So, your father dies, you perform some religious ceremony for them. And the result of that is the forefather gets to go to heaven. And as long as the successive generations continue to perform these sacrifices, the previous generations, they can stay in heaven. If those performances are stopped, everybody has to leave heaven, they come back down. So, this is very important in that culture, that everyone is trained. We do this practice for, why? We're obligated to our forebears, those who have come before us. They've given us so much. We have obligation to them. We repay this obligation by performing these sacrifices. They can stay in heaven and be happy as long as this continues. So Arjuna here is making the point that the eternal family tradition will stop. If we kill these men, the tradition will stop. This will be a great disaster for them and for all the ones who have gone before them. And not only that, the rest of the family, not performing these sacrifices, they become degraded. Okay? Performance of spiritual activity keeps us protected. In this world, we can go up or we can go down. How do we avoid going down is by performing spiritual activity. It creates like a protective shield around us. If you know something about mundane, what's it called? We have subtle body, the chakras, we know about this. So you can put a psychic shield around yourself to protect you from other people's bad thoughts and so on. So the same way, also, we protect ourselves spiritually by performing sacrifice, by going to church, by prayer, by reading scripture, by chanting Hare Krishna mantra. This gives us spiritual protection so that the degrading influences of this world do not drag us down. Otherwise, there's so much information going on, so many crazy things, and that, especially at this time in the world, those energies are taking everybody lower and lower. Movies, so on, so many things. So we protect ourselves, we keep ourselves insulated by a performance of sacrifice. So this is very important to know. And what he's saying here is that if these men are killed, they will not properly instruct their families will become degraded, and the whole culture, the whole spiritual culture will be lost. This will be a great tragedy. So in the next verse, he continues, text number 40. When irreligion is prominent, the women in the family become degraded, and from the degradation of the women comes unwanted progeny. So this is called Vanasankara, a Sanskrit word, means unwanted children. Again, there's an entire science for lifting up the culture. And the women are extremely important in keeping the culture from becoming degraded. It's the chastity of the women that protect the entire society. The men can protect physically from attack, but the women protect morally. And as long as the women maintain their chastity, this protects the morality of the entire culture. So this is very, very important here. And this is what's being pointed out. That if the men are killed, the women will not be protected. The women will become degraded. Unwanted children will come. Nobody will be properly trained. The spiritual traditions will be lost. And everything will become degraded. Well, guess what? That's what happened. Because the battle did take place, and in Kali Yuga, everything is becoming more and more degraded. Okay? So Arjuna is pointing out here, right at the beginning, this is an important reason that we should not have this fight. Because you have to know, practically every king, so many kings were there. There was like millions of men on this battlefield, and they were all going to die. And so this was going to create, it's not just a local war between two local kingdoms. It's infecting practically the entire known world at that time. And so Arjuna's arguments are very good. But at the same time, Krishna said, no. We'll get into it later in the story. He says, no, I want you to fight. Because Krishna has various purposes. What any one thing that he does fulfills different purposes. One thing is, it's Kali Yuga. Kali Yuga is the age for degraded people to become born here. The earth is like a multi-purpose room, okay? Like this room, right? Huh? Earth is like a multi-purpose room. A room that has many purposes, okay? This room you use for a temple room, you use for a family room, you use for a dining room, many different purposes, okay? So earth is like that. At some time, the earth is reserved for very spiritual, saintly people. That's called Satya Yuga. Later, as things become degraded, then less perfect people are born. Treta Yuga, Dwapara Yuga, and then finally Kali Yuga. In this age, the most degraded people are born. So they have their desires from previous life. They need a chance to be born and to fulfill their desires also. So there must be a mechanism by which everything can become degraded. So the fact that Arjuna is complaining everything's going to become degraded, well, that's actually one of the purposes of having this battle. So in one sense it's bad, but on the other hand, that's the way things need to go. So it's not bad. It's the way things should be. So, so anyway, that's the basic summary of the first chapter of Bhagavad-gita. Finishes finally with Arjuna saying, he throws away down his bow and arrows and says, I'm not going to fight. That's where it leaves off, to be continued in the next chapter. Any questions?
Why is the problem with this na hrvatski ću? Znači, to je u biti neka slabost srca kad imamo neku dilemu da li je nešto ispravno.
Baš se kaže slabost srca na početku drugog poglavlja. On kaže ima slabost srca, i zbog te bijedne slabosti srca, Karpanja došao pa da slabo. Mama, možeš prevesti? Zašto je problem slabost srca? To su...
Zašto je problem slabost srca? Ono, zašto
Mekano
nas...
se.
Da, kako
zašto je problem?
Zašto, kako s tim handlat?
how to deal with this
Mekano srce, bolje reći nego
soft heart?
Uh-huh.
How to deal with that?
sili semine.
If you have soft heart, how
Uh-huh.
to deal with this?
Okay. All right. So you're asking about Arjuna having a soft heart. Now, on one hand, this doesn't sound bad. Actually, when you read the commentary, Prabhupada says he's a devotee of the Lord. He's actually a very great devotee, and so it's natural he's going to have a soft heart. But at the same time, he's a warrior. And warrior at that time is like policemen, like military men, right? They're meant for giving protection. And not just protection for physical harm, but for protection of the culture. Huh? And this was the problem. The other side, who were trying to take the kingdom, they were not following Dharma. This is the problem. Not that they were good kings in terms of doing what a king should do, but they did not follow Dharma. And so at that time, Dharma, this is what king did. King was supposed to protect Dharma. That is, in other words, what Dharma, let's first explain Dharma. Dharma is that which should be done, okay, from a spiritual perspective. That's one definition. Dharma has many different definitions, but that's one. And so this was a spiritual culture. Everybody was expected to follow Dharma. And if the king, who was the leader of society, did not follow Dharma, then others would not also. Because they see the king's example, well, he's not following Dharma, why do I have to? Right? So Arjuna's, so it's challenging for this class of men. It's a challenge, right? They have to protect, they have to kill sometimes, even though killing on one hand is bad, but on the other hand, it's for protection. So the kings at that time, they would go practice the killing art. They would go in the forest and they would hunt animals. Not a nice thing to do, right? Killing animals, but that's their business. That's what they did. So they would practice their skills on animals so that when it was time to deal with human beings, they knew what to do. So that's the Dharma of a king. Okay? Everybody, different people in different positions in society, they have a different Dharma. Okay? Women, they have their Dharma. A priest, he has his Dharma. The king has his Dharma. So it's natural that Arjuna, being a devotee of the Lord, would have a soft heart. But this is his softness here is based on a material conception of life. Those are my brothers. Those are my friends. Materially, yes. Spiritually, they're spiritual beings. They're not the body. They're temporarily in that role of friends, brothers. But after the life, they're no longer friends and brothers. So this point is actually very important because by speaking Bhagavad-gita, Krishna is taking Arjuna, he's helping them to become free from this bodily conception of life, from this sentiment of the body, and to rise above that to the spiritual understanding of reality. Okay? What we see in this world, in one sense, is not true. It's an illusion. Because we interpret it in terms of, or let's say, the illusion is how we interpret it. Okay? We see men, women. We're not men, women. We're spiritual beings residing temporarily in man body or woman body. So if we see simply from the material perspective, it's very easy to become sentimental. But if we see from the spiritual perspective, then we can see things as they are. This is a preliminary explanation. There's a lot more to be understood from this. And as time goes, as you develop further understanding, we can come back and visit that question again and again. And there'll be further lessons to be learned. Is that okay? All right. Anything else?
Many.
Good. Question is a sign of intelligence.
Да, у biti to mi onda i objašnjava ovaj stih 40, jer to je slabost, ti su osjetilo u inteligenciju. Yeah. Thank you.
Okay. And you?
Weakness of heart in this situation is material weakness. It's
Material
not,
sentiment.
is not good. And is it in some other situation is good?
Okay, so in some situation, would it be good? Okay, let's take nurturing of a mother for a child. Okay, mother, the child's physical needs, one cannot deny. One cannot say, "Oh, this is spiritual," whatever, right? The child needs attention all the time, to be taken care of. So, on one hand, you can say, "Oh, that's material," but yes, it's extremely important, because otherwise, if the child's neglected, it can, suffer harm or even die. So, it's not an either-or situation. We don't see the world in black and white. Oh, it's spiritual or it's material. There's some balance that's required. Let's take children, for example. If they're nurtured properly, if they're trained properly, they can grow into responsible, caring adults who can fulfill the purpose of human life, which is spiritual development. If they're neglected, psychological problems develop. And so when they become adults, they're not fully capable adults. They're handicapped by psychological trauma, and therefore they're not able to fulfill the purpose of human life. So the material is important, okay? At this time, particularly for this purpose, these are kings. They've tried to settle all the affairs politically, not been able to do so. So finally, push comes to shove. It's got to come down to a fight, right? Neither side will budge. So, okay, we're going to settle it like a man. That's what it is. So these are the affairs of men. That's a whole different thing from the affairs of women or children or other aspects of society. And even for a king, okay, in the normal course of activity, the king's purpose is he's like the father of society. He has to care for all of the what are called praja, his dependents, all of the citizens, to make sure that they have proper schools, proper roads, proper commerce, so people have what they need. So he's very much concerned with the material welfare of the people. Again, here in this situation, the king they're fighting over the question of dharma. Okay? So it's a paramount issue because, you can take a series of higher and lower truths materially. Okay? The highest truth
višu i nižu. You can,
Okay, yeah. So one truth is higher than another one. Okay. Hierarchy.
znači ima istina, pa ima istina više iznad nje, pa istina više, znači...
Okay.
Oh.
One truth is, let's say, more important than another one. Okay. In a spiritual culture, the highest truth is dharma. That means it's just like the captain of a ship. He's setting up for the sea. Water everywhere. There's no lines like for the road, right? He has to steer his ship. He has to know. He sets his course. So the king is setting the course for the culture. Dharma. We're aiming towards dharma. If somebody tries to pull it away from dharma, he has to protect that and keep on the course. Huh? So that's the highest principle. And that's what's going on here. There's the principle of dharma is being challenged. And so Krishna and the Pandavas, they are fighting for dharma. Okay?
Znači,
So that was your question. So
yeah.
is that
Yeah,
Understood?
yeah, this is... But for now, it's okay.
okay? Oh, is there more? Is there some other detail or something?
For now, for today.
Okay.
Znači, u takvim krajnim slučajevima se moraju ubiti da se zaštiti duhovna kultura. Znači, to ti je kao, like in battle, sometimes you have your colleague is,
You have a wound? You get some wound?
yeah,
Okay.
and if you get him, you get fired, and if you are commander, your people can confuse, and sometimes you must leave him. Sometimes you
Uh-huh.
must leave him.
Okay.
You know,
Yeah. Okay.
This,
I see.
yeah.
So you're saying, so one of your men becomes injured.
Yeah,
You can't stop to
yeah,
take
yeah.
care of him because you have to deal with everything
Sometimes it is very
It's
Tough
sad.
situation.
You naturally you want to help
yeah,
the person.
but,
but
you must
If you don't take your attention away, everybody will get killed.
This is like this. You must
Yeah.
kill all these friends and relatives and I don't know.
Yeah. That's a very good example.
Yeah.
Sure. Right. These men have to be killed because otherwise the entire culture becomes destroyed.
Drama. One devotee, Gorgadada Prabhu, all devotees, he do it real drama.
Oh yeah.
Perfect. He is actor and every devotee, which actor, Bhakti Suradle predstavu, Mahabharata,
Yeah.
first class.
How many scenes? One drama or many dramas?
One,
He do the whole Mahabharata in one
no.
one show?
Different,
Different
stories,
scenes.
different scenes, but no all
Uh-huh.
it's impossible.
Okay, yeah.
Yeah. But main, for us, main from Bhagavad-gita and like that.
Do you have video?
Now here no, but I can find. I can call him. I think he have.
That'd be nice for her if there's video.
Yeah. Probat ću nabaviti to. Yeah. Nice. We here have for Ramachandra.
Which is coming up Sunday, by the way. Sunday, Ram Vijay. Sunday. Ramachandra's victory over...
Ramachandra, okay.
Yeah,
But
Sunday.
Ramachandra is after, in spring.
His birth.
Yeah.
Ram Vijay.
Against
Ravana.
Yeah. And we have predstava, performance. Yeah.
Uh-huh.
So, Yeah.
Uh-huh.
And I think I was ocean.
You were the
You know,
ocean?
this story when he
Oh yeah.
Lord
Uh-huh.
Ramachandra
Uh-huh.
asked, please,
Yeah, yeah. Oh,
and
this is nice.
yeah, and he wants to kill. I can remember who is Lord Ramachandra. He wants to kill me, and I said, no, please, okay. You know, when
Yeah,
this,
yeah.
well, teacher. Yeah, we can also like this, simple.
Uh-huh.
You know, simple. Before uh, many like this show. Simple, you can in 1 hour. You
Yeah,
know,
yeah.
everybody knows. I don't know, Javi, Jagannath, or
Yeah.
Jaya, no, Jagamada, and like this. They sing
Sure,
and
so many.
whatever. Yeah,
Uh-huh.
yeah. And kids are also act monkeys, and I don't know.
Yeah. Very nice. Nice
Yeah.
to do that.
Kad je to bilo? To je inače u proljeće, dan pojave gospodina Ramachandra. Ramachandra je pak jedan na Ramayana. Evo, for beginning. Mahabharata je Ramayana.
Uh-huh.
For beginning.
Ja.
To je Krishna kao savršeni kralj.
Aha.
Perfect king. Yeah. On Croatian.
Yeah. Nice.
Yeah. Na hrvatskom, da, i Mahabharata isto.
There's also video you can watch too, rather than reading a book.
Je, video...
Oh, do you have a Croatian video for that?
I don't know. Aha, you mean
Some
the video
performance?
Ramayana?
Yeah.
Both. Yeah. I
Somebody's
saw
doing?
Mahabharat. Bhima is devotee with... I don't know, is it devotee or...
Bhima?
Black Negro.
Black skin.
Black skin, yeah. I don't know, is it Mahabharat acting, is they devotee, or you watch this
Oh, I don't know that.
when it's Bhima black, no?
I don't know that.
Yeah.
No.
For me it's like little, I love, but...
Costume.
Yeah. Bhima je bil crnac ga je neki, a sad ne znam što bakte ili, nemam pojma.
Na YouTube.
Je, ima sigurno.
You mean the performer had black skin? Black
Yeah.
skin devotee.
Yeah. I don't know, is this devotee or, you know, Mahabharata doing in India actors and...
Well, there is one black skin devotee in America who is very, very good.
Yeah.
And he was in New Vrindavan for a long time, and he did many dramas. He's left the body now, many years ago actually. But he was very good. Maybe there, anyway, if you had videos of something like that,
Yeah.
or if somebody, not even devotee, made performance.
Yeah.
Maybe you have from the Indian Mahabharata with subtitle in Croatian.
I don't know.
No.
I can remember.
Oh.
Yeah. Yeah, you get a good picture what happened.
Yeah. And it's a big, long story, so
Yeah.
you don't get, even you get something short, you don't get the whole story.
Yeah.
So. Okay, let's stop. Shri Bhagavad-gita.